Morning, or afternoon, or evening, everyone.
Good morning.
All right. I'll let the room fill up here for a minute. I'll share my screen. Nice. My voice sounds a little rough. It's of course because I've been cheering for the Seahawks. No, it's because I have picked up a cold last week. It will be because I've been cheering for the Seahawks, but it's another week away. My apologies to anyone from New England. There's Kevin. Welcome, Kevin. Are you in DC now?
I'm in DC now. Yeah. Buried in snow.
I was gonna say, yes. It's quite harsh back there, and meanwhile in California, they're experiencing days that my younger son who lives in LA said is pretty much like summer.
Uh,
Yeah, like 85 degrees.
Rub it in. Rub it in.
Yeah, we're not, that's not the case here in Seattle. We're just, usual rain. All right, we're at 3 minutes after, so I think we'll go ahead and get going. Welcome everyone to the February 4th meeting of the Decentralized Trust Graph Working Group. I will mention that one of my co-chairs, Martina, is has to be absent today and gives her apologies to everyone. She's based in Switzerland and had a conflict that she couldn't get out of. But she has been contributing to what we will be sharing here today. And my other co-chair, Nikki Hickman, I don't know if she's going to be able to make it today or not. I'm looking at the list. I don't see her yet.
I'm here.
You are there. Why? Oh, it's because you popped up to the top. Hi, Nikki. How you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. Sorry I've been AWOL for so long.
Well, no, you've been doing the good work with Liz, so yeah, at some point you got to catch me up on how all that's going. But welcome, welcome. All right. So as we always do, we start out by sharing our antitrust policy notice, as we always do at Restaurant PN, Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust events. And then we check and see if there are any new members that would like to do an introduction. And you have the option of if you want to do it verbally, you could just put your hand up. If you want to put something in the chat, you can do that. And I also will grab the link to our bio page if you want to add something there, and I'll put it in the chat. Bio page. This is how you can learn a little bit about the other members of the working group. And I'm not seeing any hands go up, so that's just fine. Good. We have a really great crowd here today. Um, all right. So we a quick review of the agenda. besides our typical announcements and things like that, we will have the Risk Assessment Harvest Task Force report, Credentials Task Force has several things to report. And our main topic today is going to be to dive deep into an output of a workshop we had, a first person project workshop we had in Seattle last week, that went deep into the architecture of a verifiable trust agent. And um, it was really, I was very uh, personally, actually, all of us that attended were really gratified about this. We think it was allowed us to really understand a lot more deeply what this looks like. So we wanted to share that today here and uh, uh, get folks' feedback. Again, a large number of us from the DTWG were able to attend, and so we can get all their perspectives on that. So that's and then there's a slot if there's anything else. Is there, before we go on, any other additions or revisions to the agenda? All right, if not, announcements we'll do quickly. I'm going to copy this in. So I do have an update on this event that I have mentioned several times before, February 23rd, the H2H Summit on Human Agency. I'll put that link in here in the chat. So it is co-hosted by Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust and the Advanced AI Society. It's really going to have an amazing set of speakers, including Clay Shirky is going to give the one of the main keynotes. And my update news is that they have a reach critical mass on sponsors, so they're particularly interested now in getting the right audience to attend. And so it's an invite only based conference. I've shared the invite several times. Anyone on the Decentralized Trust Graph Working Group is ground zero audience. But there is a fee, and I have they've given me the option to say, hey, for DTWG members, they will waive that fee. All you need to do is ping me and let me know, and I can tell you how to register. And so I'm just reminding anyone who wants to do that, I'll put my email in the chat, and you can do that. Michael, go ahead.
Sorry, I was on another call just for a minute. So just as a general announcement, I've just come back from the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and somebody approached me with a really interesting use case, and I'll just share the highlights in a sentence or two. They wanted to have a platform for creating a digital church for 1 billion people in communist China.
Oh.
And when you think of that as a use case for a highly decentralized, no surveillance, maximum autonomy, it's a wonderful, wonderful use case, and I'll just leave it at that.
So I've just shared that at the World Forum, it was a use case to create a digital church in China for 1 billion people.
That's what it was.
Wow. Creating a digital church for a
And of
billion
course,
people.
I got to do a little punchline here. Like that's exactly what Web 7.0 is all about, making it
Right.
easy to create digital societies. And so, I don't know, going to take a run at it.
Wow. Okay. That is super interesting. Um,
So
makes
I'm
sense.
assuming this is some sort of alternative to church that isn't actually religious and based on superstition, something that would be like Communist Party approved.
Okay, you're getting into the details. Technically, they wanted a Catholic digital church, but when you start getting into the whole church religion thing in China, and I'll be very short here, um, it's the Chinese Communist Party permits it and is tolerant of it, but you can't have anything that resembles an authority so that you can't have regular weekly like services. You can't have a pastor. You can have bishops, but the bishops are selected by the CPP, and after the fact, they're approved by the Vatican. So that was, I'm just telling you what the specific request was. And there's a strong difference between the concept of a church and a religion. So I'm actually focused on creating a digital religion because digital church won't work in China.
I see. Wow. Well, I 100% agree with you. That is a very it's a perfect use case. And
It ticks all the boxes, doesn't it, Drummond?
it absolutely does. Yeah. Wow, that's really something. Um, Fantastic. Does anyone else have any other announcements they want to share with the group? Meanwhile, I'm grabbing our attendance here, but it's more than one screen, so we're really getting a good group here today. I will paste in the last part here. Oh, come on. I have to get a second part of the screenshot. Okay. All right. Well, with no other announcements, let's dive into it. And I will the one action item I mentioned and uh, Martina invited. Actually, Martina attended virtually a good part of the workshop last week and said she is planning to do revisions to the Miro board. I'll copy this. So I'm going to put this in the Kevin, verifiable trust community maxed. Exactly. Oh, and this is Brendan makes a very good point. I was going to add agenda item if we have time to talk about the Molt book and OpenClaw, we can do that. But it is true that the AI agents are starting their own church. My favorite part about that is it's called the Crustafarians. Oh, world is too amusing. Anyway, so I put a link to the Miro board. And again, it will be being revised by Martina, but she welcomes anyone to use that Miro board. And certainly what we'll be going over today will become onto that. So now risk assessment and harms prevention task force report over to Scott and Nikki.
Um, I don't know if Nikki's on the call, but she was not on the call yesterday. So, you know, one of the things that I want to be clear about is, we're combining risk assessment and harms, but they have two objectives. One is to really identify what the risks are for other task forces and specifications to apply. What are we trying to do to mitigate risk? Harms is identifying activities that are happening in the marketplace that the use of this technology is causing a harm. And so that's a separate kind of effort, but we've combined it into one task force. So we're waiting on the risk assessment really to get some specification work done so we can map out a risk assessment matrix. What we decided to do with the group yesterday is to tackle looking at current spec that has been released, I guess, and look at it from a harms perspective and spend time next meeting into advancing that. And at the point where we're ready to share our results, we'll do that. Okay. Go Seahawks.
To more risk. All right, that sounds great. I was, as Scott knows, not able to make the meeting yesterday due to this cold. But I look forward to that. And I also think I'm just going to point out it'll be obvious when we review the verifiable trust agents. It'll be more good material for looking at risks and harms. Okay. over to credentials. Unless Nick, is there anything? I guess she is with us.
I am. I'm really sorry about yesterday and other weeks when I failed to turn up. So I'll catch up with Scott asynchronously and make sure that I'm contributing. Okay.
It's very cool. Very cool. No problem. All of us have things coming and going all the time. um, okay, so I'm trying to monitor the Slack. I mean the chat as well. All right, over to the credentials task force. And I put in here three updates. First, just to, since we are ready now, as per our last call, to move into working draft spec drafting, which we will be moving into GitHub. At that stage, I really wanted to make sure these are the first specs that are being undertaken, technical specs, with us being now under LFDT. All of our earlier technical spec work was started before we were under LFDT. So reached out to the LFDT head of standards, Jory Burson, and we have a group of us, and anyone else who's interested is welcome to join. We have a call with her tomorrow. I think it's 12:15, something like that, Pacific time, to just get her input on this spec template. She's already sent us, an email description. All this is just getting all the boilerplate and things right, so we don't have to do a bunch of extra work later on. We can just start with all that. So that meeting's been set up, and once we get that input, we will start the process of setting up that template, and then we'll start an instance of it for the credentials, DTG credential specification. I'll remind anyone that is interested, we have a few volunteers besides Martina and I to be editors of that spec, but anyone else who's interested, just let us know. Be happy to involve you. Second update, concept terminology working group, of which I'm a co-chair, met on Monday, and I talked to folks about our DTG glossary, and they said, wow, that's fantastic. Let's get that all. We did a short review, and they said this is, even though we could always make it a standalone glossary. Any set of terms in any glossary with our spec up T tool, you can make its own standalone glossary from. But their feedback was it feels like stuff that should be incorporated into the main Trust RP glossary. So the cool part is that folks said, hey, that's what you can use, ChatGPT or Claude or one of those tools to do. If you already have them in a Google Doc and it's well structured, that's a pretty easy process. And as one who's hasn't been as deep into those tools, I was like, that's a great idea. It'll save us a lot of work. So that will also be part of the plan, because our spec work will be using the spec up T, a spec editing tool, which has all these terminology features built in. So what it means is every term we use in the spec, in the digital version of the spec, will be just like a W3C spec. Every defined term will be underlined, and you will be able to hover it in and get a pop-up definition. That's what spec up T does. So it's the second update there. And the third one is Jeff's with us here. We have our next, we have a real customer here. Jeff, I don't know if you want to give a brief preview of the next call we have with the Linux kernel team.
Yeah, sure. We've spoken to them a couple times and have just to get input on some of the pain points and what they're dealing with, and how the solutions that we're working on with DTG and related stuff through FPP can help them. Glenn, who has been developing a tool for them to manage keys and DIDs and VCs, is going to present a demo of the work that's done so far to capture input from them and start to think about next steps for them to trial it out and run it alongside their existing system of managing GPG keys for signing and things like that. So we'll be speaking with them at the top of the hour just to show them that and also make sure that they're understanding what the advantages are and things like that, facilitating key rotation, things of that nature that DIDs allow them to do more easily than a typical PGP web of trust. So that's a quick summary of what we're going to be doing.
Super. Thank you, Jeff. Obviously, we're very excited about that because it's a really super serious customer for what we're doing. And the good news is everything that is being prepared on the code for that is 100% compliant. That's one of the reasons we want to get the credential spec into working draft mode is it's going right off, our current docs, and which is fine, but it's just the sooner we have a working draft that we can refer to a little bit more officially, the better.
Yeah, just to add to that, Drummond, we are working from 0.3 version of the DTG spec for the credentials right now, so the tool's up to date with that. So we'll obviously be able to update it some more if we reach a 0.4, but not sure where we're going with that right now.
Uh, 0.4 should, if everything else goes right. I just put a link into 0.3 for anyone who's wondering. There shouldn't be a 0.4 because it should be working draft 01. Meaning once we move into that, then we can work directly against GitHub issues on any changes and all that. So we do have this step we need to take, and that's why we're getting the template down, and then everything will move into a spec up T document on GitHub. If possible, I was going to mention if ideally, we actually have that ready for next week's meeting. I'm not sure we will be able to accomplish that. I'm looking at the calendar right now. That would be the 11th. What I would really like to make sure is within 2 weeks, by the 18th, we have working draft 01 ready, and we're reviewing it, looking at it, and starting to then post any issues against it. And there's a good reason for reaching that particular milestone because the week after that is the Linux Foundation Member Summit. So again, the Monday of that week is the H2H Summit on Human Agency. But the following 2 days, 24th and 25th, the Linux Foundation Member Summit. And I just spoke with Daniela Barbosa and Hart Montgomery yesterday, the ED and CTO of LFDT. We have once again, there's a 2-hour workshop that has been scheduled for the reviewing the Linux kernel maintainer verification. And what was last year sort of basing an overall proposal to go down this road that Jim Zemlin was, very excited about and led the workshop on. This is now to go and show the code, show Jeff's been doing great work preparing the info that will be needed to share with them, and basically the goal is to come away with a deployment plan. And oh, one more thing, Jeff, I didn't even tell you this because I just had this call at the end of the day yesterday. They already they want to pick the second project that will be deployed. Interesting enough, without any prompting, because we had our own thoughts about it, they're already suggesting Kubernetes, which was our top choice when we discussed it last week. So this is serious progress. This will be great. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Jeff, to bring up about that? I think we've covered pretty much all good stuff. Okay. So let me go down to the our next agenda item, and I'll get this up on the screen here because I want to put these these definitions here in front of us. So again, I'm going to invite all of the folks who, besides Jeff and I, Brendan, Alberto, do we have Marcus today? I'm just checking. I don't know. He's in Vienna, whether he can attend all the time. He was also at the workshop. But anyway, anyone who was at the workshop who wants to, join this discussion review. As I said earlier, one of the goals was to really dive down into, all right, what do we need to do to start to be able to deploy verifiable trust communities? We have plenty of options of early communities that are interested in wanting to deploy DTG credentials and start to gain the benefits of having a verifiable trust community. So now we had to get down into what is the open source reference software that we want to and I say we, in this case, it's the first person project, which is all about building a network on DTG credentials, first person network. And if in case anyone on this call is not familiar with it, I will make sure that I'll put a link to the first person project white paper, which explains all about what we're doing and why we're doing it. By the way, the 1.2 version just was posted last week, which is the only real thing going on is it's tracking the work we're doing here at DTG. So the meeting was about how we're going to go actually, deploy this, which requires open source software. And in this case, it's a project that will be stewarded by the First Person Cooperative, which was formed last October. So what we ended up, the technical, the developers that attended said, okay, let's dive deep into really laying out what they need, what the project would require. And that, I just saw Riza says, Quai wants to use DTG and QuaiNet. Yes, that's one of the things we'll talk about on March 5th. That'll be super cool. And by the way, anyone else who has, besides Michael's work on the, billion member church, that's a perfect example. Anyone who has a verifiable trust community that they want to, that's interesting. If I put my hand up, Zoom does it automatically, puts my hand up, and I don't even know how to put it down now. As a verifiable trust community, and if you're interested, I mean, obviously you're here because this is important, but if you want to, have it be part of the, what we're trying to accomplish, first person cooperative and first person network, just you can always reach out to me and just let me know, and we can get you involved there. In any case, so we drilled down, and the reason I've copied these two definitions from the glossary over is because we ended up going very deep into what this actually meant for the architecture and ultimately the code structure. And in particular, when we think about a verifiable trust community, we think about communities, right? That's what we're talking about. And we, sometime about a month ago when we put together the glossary, we said one of the key things when you have a verifiable trust community, and therefore you need something that everyone can connect to. Although there's nothing technically that says you couldn't have the community actually operate at the edge of the network. It's one of those things that makes it very, very clear you want it, on a server or in the cloud, so that. And we said, okay, so it's verifiable because it has a verifiable identifier, and that identifies the DTG node that represents that community. That DTG node therefore has a DID document that's going to tell any other participant in the DTG graph how to interact with that node. And so we said to have a common term for the software that is then responding there, we call that a verifiable trust agent. So what we ended up digging down into was what is the architecture of that, and what really pushed us. Oh, Marcus is here too. Good. He can. I want to tee this up and then have all of the folks. I think I've got everyone who's here a member of the DTG as part of that discussion. Share their thoughts about the picture. I'll bring up shortly. But what really pushed it is we said, okay, verifiable trust communities have verifiable trust agents. What about individuals? What about people? And how are we represented as individuals, as DTG nodes, people? How are we represented by verifiable trust agents? And again, that's why I put up these definitions here just to make it clear. A community is a node, a person is a node. Well, AI agents can also be nodes if they're acting autonomously. We need to be able to very clearly know that's a community, that's a person, this agent. The fourth thing is this is a device. Device has an agent too, but what the thing you're interacting with in that case is a device. So what we developed was, and I put it down here, I'm going to just quickly show you two pictures to introduce this, and then we can the participants can just talk about it. This is a diagram from the 1.2 first person white paper to just share this general picture that you have people on this side, verifiable trust communities on this side. And we just want to show we've had this term personal network manager that's in the glossary that is being used in this case on these edge devices. And we wanted to show the multiple device scenario. And the same thing with the members of the community that are then interacting or managing the community verifiable trust agent. So everyone was very comfortable with of course, this is how, some people, for instance, manage a website today, in many cases. But this side of the picture was what drew a lot of interest. Oh, what is a verifiable trust agent in the cloud? If that is, again, it's not required, but if you want to make it convenient to not only have multiple devices for an individual, but have them be able to, participate as a peer with everyone else on, in any, DTG network, I'll put it that way. And have the same capabilities in terms of messaging, message delivery, backup, restore, all these other things that can happen. What is the software that would be needed for a personal VTA in the cloud? As well as, obviously the community. So it gave us a perspective on the overall requirements, and actually what needs to happen for it to be both secure and privacy preserving. And that led us, and I would have copied here is the picture that was, I think I can get, I have to go to full screen on this. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the major. There's a bunch of functions up here that we can see, but I can get the balance of the picture right here. Yeah, I've got it all on screen. This is the architectural diagram. I call it a deployment architecture diagram that came out of it. And at this point, I want to ask the other developers that actually I was not in the session that created this picture. I was in a different session, and then came back and had the developers that attended explain this. So I want to ask those developers to maybe walk through and give us commentary on this diagram. Does anyone want to volunteer among the set of you?
I can start off and then others can add in. So yeah, we were exploring, there were a bunch of builders in the room thinking about how can we build this. And the goal was to allow for someone to have a fully decentralized kind of from the edge experience, but also to facilitate real world performance expectations and connectivity things where, the kind of always on world that we live in. So we tried to do both of those things. So and again, these are following the credentials and VTC bootstrapping documents that you've all seen. And so the idea is, yeah, that you have a personal network manager. That's where you start off. You can have multiple devices there, which have different keys, and an ability to kind of manage those. You also have, of course, your communities that you're connected to, and each community will need a community network manager for, doing kind of community related tasks. And of course, that's related on your, kind of authorization to do so. Are you a trust anchor? Have you been given administrative rights, et cetera, with the credentials that we've talked about? And you can have more than one in the cloud verifiable trust agent. So that's why you see in the center the VTA, VTA2, VTA3. So you can segment things if you so choose. Of course, there's going to be a very nice SDK for kind of managing all these things. And if you scroll up a little bit, Drummond, we can look at these kind of functionalities that the VTA was proposed to have. And the ones in green are kind of core, and the other ones are extensions. So, of course, you need to be able to create and manage DIDs, create and manage keys. You need to be able to back up and export, and that also includes kind of syncing to a different VTA if you need to, and then consent management. So those were kind of core things. The mediator is kind of a necessary service. You can just take an off-the-shelf mediator that just does the normal DIDCOM mediation. One thing I don't think Drummond talked about is there was from like a kind of version one, let's get something built that people can build off point of view. Using DIDCOM 2.1 was mentioned as, a key protocol. So we're trying to find the quote narrow waist in the stack where we can all agree on some core elements that would allow us to accelerate development and roll these things out, since we are, at least as far as the trust agent infrastructure, starting from a greenfield kind of situation. Um, Other things, of course, is if we want to connect to legacy services, we'd want some kind of open ID, login, connectivity kinds of things. But people can build their own ones as needed. That can be community efforts to extend. Um, and yeah, I think that's kind of what came to mind, and I'm sure I'm forgetting many things. So anyone else can jump in to add some more detail on that.
Just checking if Marcus or I know Michael put his hand up, but I'm just seeing if there's anyone else that wants to that was there that wants to add anything. Okay, well, let's Michael, you have your hand up first, so let's do you and then Marcus.
Okay. So I kind of asked the question in the chat. So generally, it's like, how are these trust anchors elected, and how are they chosen by the community? How is the governance model chosen? Is it by the community, or is it a priority sort of laid down by some central authority? How does that work?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and the good I I say good news. The answer is very. This is what I love about the church and state thing. Um, the governance process in the VTT bootstrapping document, I put in a number of warnings. However, the community decides to do that is up to that community. The role of trust anchor is simply there to say, hey, this is, you have to bootstrap trust some way. Trust anchor is a well-known term in cryptography, cryptographic infrastructure for a long time. So it is entirely up to the community how they do that. There is no, this is a decentralized trust network, and every community decides. Now, um, how a set of communities would agree, hey, we're going to, in order to be able to trust each other, we're going to agree to certain things. That's, we have a term for that. That's a verifiable trust network. The verifiable trust network will establish some common governance among those communities. The example we use, the whole purpose of the first person networks is to say, if you're going to issue a personhood credential, a credential that can be counted on that it's a real person and unique in that community, you'll have to meet governance requirements for doing that. You'll have to, say, yes, we actually do that, and we can prove it. But even that doesn't say anything about how they select trust anchors. It just says you're going to issue those credentials in a certain way.
So
So
just a quick footnote, if I might, Drummond.
sure.
So, and I'm going to use a Web 7 example just because it's instructive. We're trying to focus on the minimum number of principles or operations that are needed to give birth to a society and support that society. And of course, identity is one, authentication is the second, secure trusted messaging is the third, and voting. Because if you have those four and you only need those four to support those four, then you can do anything you want. If you
Yep.
have the ability to elect representatives, which is electing a trust anchor, a notary, whatever you want, an overlord, whatever you want to call them. But we think with those four principles of identity, authentication, secure, trusted messaging, and voting, that you've got everything you need.
I that sounds I would agree with that. And these are the kinds of services within a community that I think will make verifiable trust communities very, very attractive. And to Riza's point that he just put in the chat, when you say federal government, you could be referring to a number of countries. In general, I would say you're right, Riza, that you can't nationalize a VTC because it is independently created. I wouldn't put it past some federal governments of some countries to try and say, okay, we don't like this, but I'll stop there. That's not. Um, it is definitely. I love the point of self-organizing. You should be able to self-organize a VTC and self-organize, and also you can nest them, right? So you can nest or connect them any way you want. And yeah, that's. I think we're getting a good sense of that flexibility. I don't know how to put my hand down, so it looks like I'm at the top of the list. But Marcus, you're next. Go ahead.
Yes, I raised my hand since I was also at the workshop last week, and I'm not sure how good my audio quality is. So if you can't hear me,
No,
please
you
say
sound
something.
great. You sound great.
Okay, good. I mean, I think Drummond and Brandon, you already summarized the insights and the outcomes pretty well. I can say that I fully agree with this concept of the verifiable trust agent. It's a concept that we've seen in some other projects as well, right? It's a little bit comparable maybe to a solid pod or a personal data store or a decentralized web node or a server user agent. So this is a pattern that comes up again and again. The concept that there's some kind of component that's always available that helps me with receiving messages, that helps me with multiple device flows and things like that. So this makes a lot of sense. This is very, very powerful, I think, for decentralized trust graphs and the first person network. So this is great. One interesting insight that I can maybe share that was very interesting for me last week was when we discussed a bit or when we used the term agent, right? We sometimes overloaded the term agent a little bit. On one hand, when we say agent, we mean something like what's here on the screen, a verifiable trust agent. That's a component that acts on behalf of a person or of a community. But in this case, the verifiable trust agent is not itself a node in the decentralized trust graph, right? It doesn't have its own DID. It helps a person or a community manage their DIDs, but it's not a separate node with its own DID. But on the other hand, sometimes when we say agent, we do mean something, an AI agent or whatever we want to call it, that has its own identity, that is its own node and has its own did, and that can participate in relationships and in messaging and in things like that. And then at some point somebody said that an agent can also be a member of a community. And then I thought, hold on, what does that mean? Because we started with the idea of proof of personhood, and then we generalized that to proof of membership in the community. And so my assumption was that only real people or community, real people can be member of a community, because if we say that AI agents can be members of communities, then to me it felt like that could defeat a bit the original idea of proof of personhood. But then someone said we can easily solve that or distinguish that by just having an attribute on a membership credential, right? So we could say that communities can issue membership credentials to real people, but also to AI agents, and there could be a property, a simple attribute on the membership credential to distinguish whether that's a real person or not. So this was interesting for me to think about this, what it means for an agent to be its own node in the graph and to be able to even join a community.
Yes, I strongly agree. And I saw Michael's note, so I want to clarify it because this is a super important point. And yeah, we'll get down to the notebook. So the recall the definition of verifiable trust agent. It is the software agent that represents a DTG node. Okay. And it's very, very strict. A software agent, it doesn't mean that it's an AI agent, right? And it doesn't mean it's either in the cloud or it's local. It's just the software agent that represents a DTG node, and therefore it always has a DID, right? Because we just said that's how you represent. The key aha, and for a number of us is okay, so in this case, we on this diagram, and I'll pull up just to reinforce this. This is a diagram specifically of a verifiable trust agent in the cloud representing a person. Okay. If you have a verifiable trust agent in the cloud representing a community, then you're going to have a bunch of people down here, right? Or more than one anyway. But the aha is, oh, verifiable trust agents, if you have a node in the graph that's not a person and not a community, it could be an AI agent, right? That you want to give a separate verifiable identifier to. It's now a node in the graph, but it's a node that you want to, that should be able to prove I'm an AI agent, I'm not a person, I'm not a community. Okay. And again, the fourth category is we want devices to be able to also participate, be known as a device, right? This is how you can actually, and I want to get to a key point, was another revelation for me in this diagram about agents for devices. But and if it's a node in the graph, it has a DID. It has a verifiable trust agent as a generic term for what you're going to interact with. The service endpoint you're going to be able to interact with in a standard way on the graph. But you should be able to know this is a person, and they should be able to produce proof of personhood. This is an AI agent, and it can produce proof of agenthood. And if it's a community, it should be identified as a community and be able to tell you, well, what other communities is it connected to. So I'll stop there. Just hopefully that clarifies what we're describing here. I'm stopping. Just gonna. If anyone has a question, just raise your hand. If not, I will point out again what I want to talk about is the other sort of aha for me that came out of this. And it's not actually this side. We just wanted to talk about individual, joins or it becomes a member of any number of communities. One of the most interesting ones that came up, from my perspective, was the idea of your family, right? That individuals that, get their own verifiable trust agent that join the decentralized trust graph can create a VTC for their family. And then, it's called the most intimate of the communities. And of course, they can connect and then start, connecting that with other families. And it's a very, very simple way to think, okay, verifiable trust communities of all scales. Adam, I just saw your hand go up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I had a question about a person who has several devices, let's say, or agents. So they have several VTAs, and I suppose that means they have several DIDs, although I could also imagine that you could have your DID represented on several devices, the same DID if you wanted to. But when it comes to a personhood credential, which of those do they share a personhood credential, or because I'm trying to imagine what the graph looks like. And Obviously there's kind of like a mini graph that connects all of your devices together into a network. And I think that has a name like what's the name of that network of your
Well, we
own devices?
we refer to right now, you have your personal network manager, which is
Oh,
managing this, but also the set of relationships you have. So it's not a precise term for. I
right,
think what you just said is this network of your devices
right.
that are all interconnected with your one or more VTAs. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So in that other diagram, you had like there's the inner part and then there's the outer part, and the outer part
Yes.
have like its own little sub networks, and then but it the way it looks from that diagram is that when you join this community that you're, or I guess you could say when you join the specific trust graph, that you are now just represented by one node in that graph. Is that true? Although there are agents with different agents within that graph, um, each person or each AI agent. Um, well, I guess another question is AI agents often represent people. So let's say that I want to have a couple of AI agents in there. Um, they would each have their own node in the graph in the decentralized trust graph. But as far as me personally saying that like this is me, not an agent representing me, this is just me. I'm just going to have one in the decentralized trust graph, or are each of my devices going to be represented there? How does that work?
That is an extremely good question. Actually leads me into this last thing I was going to highlight. So I'm going to give you a two-part answer. So let's talk about this node right here, the verifiable trust agent. So that when we talk about a person in the graph, the person is represented by the set of DIDs that they have. Okay, it's not one. It could be one, but I think it's inherently going to end up being the set of DIDs that they have, and that's the whole reason we have support for personas, right? So you have the ability to control the personas you're sharing. Now, the aha for me was not only do you have those set of DIDs you manage, and you can think of those as you're managing those within your VTA, especially if you think, well, how do I have a persona that I can, activate or message on, for instance, on any of my devices? Well, that's one of the reasons you'd want the DID management to actually be happening at the VTA in the cloud. So what this diagram shows, and was again the aha that I had, was with each of your devices, rather than think, oh, I've got one app on that, the PNM app, the personal network manager that I will use to manage everything I do from that device, and so therefore, and it's communicating, on the set of DIDs with the VTA. The aha for me was actually any app that wants to tap into and communicate with others, in the network to do. And the example that kept coming up is all of us who have dealt with banks and their banking apps. They don't want you using another app. They want whatever functionality they want to build it into their app, right? So the beauty of it is that can be supported by that app having its own DID and having a DIDCOM relationship with the DID that is, assigned to that relationship that will be part of the DIDs managed in the cloud VTA. So now what you essentially have is a DIDCOM connection between that app and your VTA that can then communicate or pass messages like directly to the bank. So that end-to-end channel is not just to the VTA, it's all the way to the app on any device you have, right? So our whole idea of you being able to manage the set of DIDs that represent your different relationships and personas on the VTA now extends down to any device you have, any app you have, which I just thought it's very elegant, and it means that you can get, end-to-end communications all the way down to the device.
Okay, so just quick follow-up. So when I'm joining and participating in a decentralized trust graph, it sounds like it's up to me to define my persona or personas that I'm going to use and which DIDs map to those.
Yes.
Because like you said, I may have different apps that each are generating a different DID. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes. And I want to acknowledge that is both the beauty and the challenge, right? Right. The beauty is we actually have the tools for, doing essentially, a privacy by design at scale. The challenge then is, the user interface and to not put a cognitive burden on the end user. There were some great discussions about that at the workshop last week, and I'm very bullish that there are, user interface metaphors that will work fairly well for that. But the ability to enable apps, existing apps and the whole app ecosystem to tie in and get essentially a private channel for their app, I think that is highly attractive, highly saleable, and now there's a clear way that it fits into the architecture. So, all right, we're just about at time, and there's a set of us that have to leave quite promptly because we're going to go talk to the Linux kernel team. So, in the remaining 2 minutes, are there any other questions? I'm sort of looking at the chat. Yeah, there's a bunch of good stuff in there. I do want to say that I didn't put. Oh no, Jorge, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just quick. This is very, very good information. Thank you. I'm just kind of flying on a wall listening. But I have one question for folks to ponder. If two individuals have smartphones and they're standing next to each other and the network is down, is this solution going to facilitate them being able to establish a relationship?
This is a perfect question and discussion that we had. There's nothing, there's no a transport binding that would prevent that. They should be able to talk directly. Mesh, certainly a QR code would work. That's one of the beauty of DIDs. So that again is an engineering challenge. To have the the apps running on the device be able to like connect directly, form another relationship, and then synchronize or share that information with the VTA in the cloud. And I see. I hope that answered your question, Riza. Yeah, I think you get the last
Last
word.
word. Okay, quick shout out. The Southern California Linux Expo, the 23rd annual one will be in Pasadena, California, March 5th. Drummond Reed will be a keynote speaker, but among the keynotes, Ben Goertzel, Rafi Krikorian, CTO of Mozilla, Drummond, and Doc Searls, and the thanks so much, Drummond, for getting us Daniela Barbosa to moderate the panel. So we've got a stellar lineup of all the key players in decentralization. So thanks very much. See you there March 5th. Book tickets early because the hall will fill up really quickly. Okay.
There you go. Excellent. I'm actually just trying to zoom out to get the whole diagram. If I can here, Scott, I had a question for it. I'm looking forward to that very much, Riza. And yeah, anyone, one question that has already come up is that will that be streamed or is it only live in person?
It will be streamed, but last year the stream quality wasn't that good. You got to be there, and there's going to be an after party, and it's going to be a band, and it's going to be just a fantastic all-day event. So be there.
All right, I think yeah, I zoomed out far enough to get the whole thing. I think Scott, you were asking. It comes from a Miro board that I can't share directly. So, but I want to recreate this and have something that we can comment on directly. And with that, I've got to go. So thank you, everyone. As always, we will see everyone next week. And thank you so much.